My name is Hannah, and this is my beauty budget. Hey y'all, okay, I am so excited for this video just because it was so fun to film and the results have been so gratifying. I'm really excited to show you how the process of decluttering my single shadows went, and I'm especially excited to show you what I ended up with at the end. This is the third in what is essentially a little series of 3 videos. The first one was my full eyeshadow palette collection declutter. The second one was the video in which I depotted 4 of the eyeshadow palettes that I decided I didn't want to keep in their original form. And now this third video is the one in which I am laying out all of my single eyeshadows and deciding which ones to give away and which ones to keep, and compiling the ones that I'm keeping into one big, giant palette. I bought this palette on Amazon and I'll link it down below. I also talk a little bit more about it in the video, so I'm not going to get into the details of it. And also, this is something that I bought with my beauty budget this month, so I'm going to return to talking about it in my video about what I spent my budget on in February. Needless to say, it's a great palette and I feel like it was a really smart purchase for me, but you're gonna see it featured throughout the upcoming video. So let's just go ahead and get right into the meat of said video. I am so excited to be finally decluttering my single eyeshadows. I am falling more and more in love with single eyeshadows with every day that passes, and I want my collection of singles to be curated. So I'm finally sitting down to do it. The first step was to depot 4 eyeshadow palettes that I have been planning to turn into single shadows. I did that and I filmed it, so that's another video. It should already be up on my channel. Needless to say, this was the Juvia's Place Saharan 2. This was the Juvia's Place Festival palette. This was the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette, and this was the Alamar palette, but they are now just single eyeshadows, and I'm gonna go through and decide which ones I want to keep and which ones I want to give away. But that's not all. I have some other things here before me, namely this, a beautiful baby. This is a giant magnetic palette that I bought with part of my budget in February, and it might be my favorite thing that I've bought with my budget in the entire year so far. It's from ADEPT. It was $20 and I bought it on Amazon. I will link this palette down below. I absolutely love the fact that it has very little branding. It says ADEPT Cosmetics right here, you can probably see, but for the most part it's pretty blank. You guys know that I love sort of a glam but grungy reptile pattern on stuff, and it's huge, it's black, it's very well built, it's sturdy, and I am hoping that all of my single shadows will be able to fit in here. These are all of my single shadows currently, all of my single eyeshadows other than the ones that I just depotted. So I do have a number of little magnetic palettes that I use from time to time, but all of them are currently empty. Their contents are all in this palette. I also have a bunch of little magnets here that actually came with the giant ADEPT palette. They were included in the purchase. And right now, these shadows before me don't have magnets on the back. They're freshly depotted. So many of them are going to need to be magnetized so that I can put them into either this palette or this little Z palette. This is going to be my giveaway palette. So any eyeshadows that I decide not to keep, I'm going to put into this palette right here. There might be some overflow. I actually don't really have a sense of how much I'm going to keep and how much I'm not going to keep, but I have other little magnetic palettes. So if this one gets filled up, I'll go and grab another one. I think I'm going to start by grouping these shadows by color and finish. So the matte shadows are all going to be together and the shimmers are all going to be together. And then within those groups, I will try to group similar colors together so that I can kind of swatch around and figure out which ones are similar to each other, which ones are unique, and which ones I definitely want to keep and which ones I can part with. So these up here are all of the shimmers, and these down here are the mattes. I'm going to move the shimmers out of the way, and let's start with the mattes. Alright, I've grouped them kind of into little color stories. I'm just gonna have at it from here. The refrigerator did just turn on, so if there's a little bit of buzzing, I apologize, but hopefully you can still hear me okay. Let's start over here in this area with these kind of warm oranges. So this eyeshadow and this eyeshadow both cracked when I was depotting them, and it's not a color that I reach for enough and that I love enough, and it's not a unique enough color for me to feel like I need to keep either of these in spite of them being broken. Neither of them's a total disaster, they're usable, but it's just not worth it. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and throw both of these away. Now this one right here, I just picked it up to check the back to see what it was, and I realized that the little crack that formed around the edge when I was depotting it is deadlier than I had thought that it was. So this one is gonna go into the trash as well. On site, I don't have another eyeshadow that's very similar to this, but I do feel like I have other rich, bright reds, so I'm happy to just let this one go. This is one from Juvia's Place that I used a bunch of times, tried to make it work, and I just could not make it work. It didn't layer very well on my eyes. It was always patchy. It wasn't good at deepening up the crease. It didn't do its job for me. The way that I like to use eyeshadow, this one didn't perform. And I just noticed that it too has a little crack in it from when it was depotted, so I don't think I want to give this one away either. I am going to throw this one away now. So looking at the rest of these pans of reds and pinks, they're definitely all pretty different. These ones look a little bit similar on site, but this is one of my OG favorite red shadows, which is by Makeup Forever. And this one right here is, I believe, from the Jaclyn Hill palette. It's more of a brown. They are unique enough that I think it's worth keeping. These two look pretty similar. This is also from the Jaclyn Hill palette. It's like a rich reddish brown. And then this is from the Alamar palette. So they swatched pretty similarly, but I don't want to part with this shadow from the Jaclyn Hill palette because it was the red that I used when I did my monochromatic makeup look, and I really love how that look turned out. I loved the use of that shadow all over the face. And then this orange I remember seeing was pretty much a dupe for Real Gar from the Modern Renaissance palette, and I just decluttered the Modern Renaissance palette, and part of my thinking was that this one would kind of stand in for Real Gar after I decluttered that palette. So even though they're so close to each other, I think of this as more of an orange red, and I think of this as more of an orange. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep both of these guys. I think all of these have made it through, and I'm gonna go ahead and pop them in my magnetic palette. Alright, so I've isolated the purples and browns and warm plummy mauves. I'm going to go through and do some swatching and see if there are any dupes among this group. Okay, so right off the bat, I see that these three are somewhat similar. This one's from the Jaclyn Hill palette, and these two are ColourPop shadows. These look pretty similar, but I frequently use both of them when I'm building a look because one is ever so slightly lighter, and then the other one can really be built up and deepened up in the crease. So I would actually like to keep both of these, but this one from the Jaclyn Hill palette is close enough to these two that I don't think I need all three of them, and I love the ColourPop matte formula, so this is one that's going to go. But I'm going to pop a magnet on it and put it in my giveaway palette. Okay, so we have the same situation right here. These are two of my favorite ColourPop singles. One is a little bit more brown and one is a little bit more burgundy. And then this eyeshadow from the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette is basically like a blend between the two. And I so much prefer the formula of these ColourPop singles. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this one away as well. These ColourPop shadows, by the way, they were depotted from a ColourPop palette that had the little pans. I can't remember which palette they came from or whether they all came from the same one or it was two different ones or what, but they form a nice little color family together and I use them a lot. I really, really love these little shadows. All right, of everything that's left, I think each shadow is pretty much unique. These three browns I took a close look at. This one is a little bit reddish in undertone. This one is more of a straight chocolate brown, and then this one is definitely cool toned. So I'm going to keep all three, and I'm gonna put these guys all into my big palette. So I have three black eyeshadows here. One is ColourPop Let's Do It. That's ColourPop's black single shadow. One is from a Wet n Wild palette that I depotted. It has silver glitter in it and I never use it. And one is from the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette. It's the black that she had in there. I definitely don't need this one because I just don't use it, and I'm certainly not going to reach for it over top of ColourPop Let's Do It, which is a great black matte. And then the one from the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette is just completely subpar compared to this one. And I really only need one black single shadow. So I'm going to put this one in my giveaway palette as well. These, as you can see, are all very similar, and I've done a bunch of swatching to try to figure out what I'm going to do with them. These swatch very similarly. There's the fridge turning on again, sorry if you can hear that. These swatch very similarly, and once again, this is a ColourPop single, it's Bel Air, and this is a Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette single, and I just don't really like this formula all that much, that matte formula. It's fine, but it's definitely not as good as the ColourPop one for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that one in the little single palette and put this one into my palette. And then the same down here. This is a ColourPop shadow that I use a lot, and this is from the Jaclyn Hill palette, and it's pretty much a dupe, so I'm gonna keep the ColourPop. And these two are both from the Jaclyn Hill palette. I knew that this was a color family from that palette that I would be decluttering a lot of. This one is darker and it feels kind of creamier and just better than many of the other ones. And then this one is very, very yellow. And I just don't really like that yellow crease shade or that yellow above the crease shade. I don't really like that look. I mean, I like this grungy yellow family, but I don't like this kind of cream yellow family. So I'm gonna get rid of this guy and keep this one for just a little bit of darkening and dimension because I don't think I have a dupe quite for this one. And then here we have two ColourPop shadows that are different enough to keep both, and then my lid setting shade from ColourPop, which is Hear Me Out. All right, let's talk about these lovely grungy yellows. This is from the Juvia's Place palette and it's cracked in the corner. I would probably have kept this just to keep using the Juvia's yellow, but because it's cracked and because I have Paper Tiger, no, this isn't Paper Tiger. Wow. So this is from the Jaclyn Hill palette. I thought it was ColourPop Paper Tiger, but I guess this is ColourPop Paper Tiger and that's from the Jaclyn Hill palette. My hands are getting so grungy, I'm not sure. I'm gonna start swatching. Well, no, I wanna save my other arm for the metallics. I don't know how well you can see, but I can see right here that this one from the Jaclyn Hill palette is really quite luminous and buttery, both in color and in feel, and I actually think it performs better on me than this one from Juvia's Place. So I don't think that this is cracked enough to throw it away, but I am going to put it in my giveaway palette. And then these are all different enough to keep, so I'm gonna pop these into my palette. I actually just went and washed my hands and arms off so we can kind of start fresh. Let's talk about these matte greens. Obviously they are all very different, but I am not going to keep all of them. I don't really want to keep this weird shaped one. This is from a Wet n Wild palette that I depotted, and I really love this color, but it performs a little bit powdery. I never reach for it, and I want the color, but I don't want to keep this shadow. So what I'm going to do is put it here in my giveaway palette, but I'm going to keep an eye out for a single in that color from a brand that I really like, and I'm going to try to get it somehow. And then these are all keepers. This is from the Jaclyn Hill palette right here. This is ColourPop Team Captain. So both of these are from the Jaclyn Hill palette, and obviously all of these are really different. I think they're all really useful. I'm excited to have these depotted because I never used to reach for these in the Jaclyn Hill palette, but now that I see them shining, glowing as little singles, it makes me want to do looks with them. So I feel excited about having these and putting them on their own little ownsomes into my big palette. Okay, so here are all of the matte singles that I'm keeping, and here are all of the matte singles that I'm giving away. Let's go ahead and take a look at these shimmer shadows. I'm keeping them all! No, just kidding. I feel like mattes, I think of them as more utilitarian for me, whereas shimmers are more exciting. They're like the candy of the single eyeshadow community. So it's gonna be harder for me to decide to part with some of these. I feel like they tend to be more unique also, even when they're very close to each other. It's easier to spot those minute differences than it is with the mattes, but I will do my absolute best. Let's get started with these blues. Oh, you guys, it's already hard. I knew this was going to be hard. Okay, right off the bat, what I'm going to do is to pull out the ones that I know are really unique to me and that I really love and that I know that I'm gonna keep. So this is one of my JD Glow Galaxy shadows. I put it in the green because it really has a green flip. It really has a green shift. I don't know how well you can see that, but I think of it as something that adds green to a look and also adds a ton of glitter. It's one of my top 2 eyeshadows of all time, so I'm definitely going to keep that. And then Tea Garden from ColourPop it's like in a similar vein. It does a similar thing, but it's just less intense and less glittery. But these are 2 intense topper shades that I use all the time. And this is in a similar color family. It's the greeny gold from the Alamar palette. I don't own anything like that, so I'm gonna keep that for sure. And here is another one of my prized possessions when it comes to eyeshadow. This is Lounge. It's an Urban Decay single. This one also leaps out at me as being totally unique. It's a very pale seafoam green, gold shifting duochrome. That's probably my favorite eyeshadow out of all the eyeshadows from those 2 Juvia's Place palettes. So I'm gonna keep that one for sure. All right, let's talk about these 4. So this is from the Jaclyn Hill palette. This is from the Alamar palette, and these are 2 Juvia's Place shadows. I swatched these 2 Juvia shadows and they're slightly different colors. This one's more of a green, tealy green, and this one's more of a blue, tealy blue. But this one swatch is much more intense and creamy and has more of a reflect, and this one just feels a little bit dry to me. So right off the bat, I'm feeling like if I'm gonna choose between the 2, I'm gonna keep this really gorgeous, rich, creamy one. And then when I swatched the one from the Jaclyn Hill palette, I saw that it is pretty much an exact color dupe for this one. Even though it doesn't look that way in the pan, when I swatched them, they looked pretty much exactly the same. But again, this one's richer and creamier and easier to work with. So I feel like that means this one can go. And then this one from the Alamar palette, it is different. It's definitely greener than either of these two. So I think all three of these are unique and lovely. I'm gonna keep them all. And yeah, these two are just also totally unique. They're just really, really different shades of blue, different from each other and different from everything else that I have. And again, this is from the Jaclyn Hill palette. It's that really rich purpley blue, and this is also from the Alamar palette. But look at this, look how similar all of these are. This grungy green eyeshadow family, look at that. I definitely don't need to keep all of these. Okay, I'm actually a little bit surprised at how this has gone down. I did a little swatching down here, but I think I was out of frame. This is an old Makeup Forever shadow. It is D320, and I've really loved this for a long time, and I've used it a lot. It's lovely, but when I swatched it along with all of these other guys, it just didn't swatch as well. It's drier, the color payoff isn't very good, it's starting to get some hard pan, some little bumps in there. I think it's just old. It's one of the first eyeshadows I've ever bought, and it just may have lived its life entirely. It might also just be that it's more of a topper, but either way, I don't feel like I need to keep it. And it's so interesting because I would never have thought that. If I just look at it on its own, I'm like, oh, my prized possession, my Makeup Forever eyeshadow that I've had forever. But now when I look at it next to all of these, I'm like, oh, yeah, I definitely don't need it, and it's definitely not the best out of all of these, so it can go. And then same with this guy. This is also depotted from that Wet n Wild palette, and it's so similar to these ones, and the quality just isn't there when I swatch it next to all of these, so it's gonna go. And I really love Wet n Wild eyeshadows, the old formula. I think that this is the new formula. It was from a pretty recent palette. So now we have left this one from the Jaclyn Hill palette, which actually performs gorgeously. It's a very creamy shadow. This one, which is a Sephora collection single that Tara recently sent, and I actually really love this eyeshadow. I've been using it a lot. And then this is one that I thought that I was going to not keep from the Juvia's Place palette, but swatching it now, it's just so creamy and lovely, and it's definitely distinctively different from these two, so I'm gonna go ahead and keep all three of these guys. So these are gonna go into my little palette, and then these are gonna go into my giveaway palette. All right, let's address one of my most beloved categories of shimmery eyeshadow, which is mauves. I guess there's a purple in here too, but mauves. I mean, honestly, these all almost look like they could very well be the same eyeshadow as each other. They're not exactly the same. This, for example, is ColourPop Glass Bull. It's definitely a beautiful, strange duochrome, and it's different from the rest. Okay, so this eyeshadow from the Jaclyn Hill palette is pretty much a spot-on dupe for this one, which is Snake Eyes from ColourPop. I definitely want to keep the ColourPop. And then I've long been aware that this, which is Midnight Cowgirl from Urban Decay, is pretty much the same as Snake Eyes but with glitter, and I do like them both and use them both, so I'm going to keep those guys both. And then this one right here, this is a ColourPop shadow, and it's pretty much the same as these two. I feel like it's a little bit different. It's a little darker than Snake Eyes, but I really don't need all three of them. They just look exactly the same, and even though it's a little bit different, I don't need to keep it. I think that this is also from the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette, and this one right here is another Sephora brand single that Tara recently sent. The Jaclyn Hill one is shinier and creamier, and this one has kind of an alluring satin matte finish. I feel like even though the Jaclyn Hill one is objectively kind of like a more high impact shadow, this is more unique. The Jaclyn Hill one looks a lot like these other guys. So I'm gonna pass on that one, and I'm gonna keep this one from the Sephora collection. ColourPop Dragonfly, I use it all the time. This is my other of my top two from JD Glow. It's a really amazing duochrome, one of their Galaxy shadows. This purple is obviously unique to what I've got going on here. And then there are these sort of satiny browns. This is 24/7 from the Jaclyn Hill eyeshadow palette. It's my star eyeshadow for an all over the lid grungy wet look eye. And these are getting into like bronze territory. This is like a flat brownish weird shadow from the Morphe 35O. I think it can go. All right, I'm struggling a little with these bronzes because I really love bronze and they are all different. But this one, again, it's kind of a flat, boring shadow from the 35O. I can tell that I've barely used it, and it has the same reddish bronze undertone that 24/7 has, even though they look different in the pan. So that one can go. This one's super bright and rich and creamy. I don't really want to part with it. And this one's very, very gold, and then this one's like in the middle. So I think I'm gonna keep them all, but I just realized I haven't put my mauves into the palette yet. The giveaway palette's starting to look kind of nice. Okay, so I pulled down these other kind of yellow golds, and this bronze, yellowy bronze gold that I was feeling bad about keeping because it's kind of similar to these guys, I like it way better than these two, which I think are both from the 35O. I guess this one, yeah, this one must be from the Jaclyn Hill palette, and this is from the 35O. So these guys are gonna go, and these three bronze beauties are gonna stay. Okay, this category is way too full. This is the sort of pale champagne-y, white, peachy shimmer situation. And I'm just gonna go ahead and weed out some that I know I don't need to keep. I feel like I've done relatively well. Some of these are from the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette or the 35O, and they're just kind of lackluster and repetitive. This is a ColourPop single that's matte with glitter. This is that Wet n Wild one. And then this is a Juvia's Place one that it's perfectly fine, it's perfectly nice. It's just not something that I love enough to make it worth keeping this giant pan, seeing as space is kind of filling up in here. So I'm gonna let go of all of these guys. And then I have this really pretty gold Juvia's Place palette and this ColourPop single that I really like, and they swatch identically. So I'm gonna keep the ColourPop because I love ColourPop shadows and because it's a lot smaller. This is a Morphe shadow from the 35O that swatches beautifully, and this is from the Jaclyn Hill palette. I really love that one, and this is another ColourPop single that I really love. These are kind of in like the shimmery peachy realm, which is a kind of eyeshadow that I really like, especially when it's creamy and thick like these guys. They're all different enough to keep. And then this is a gold one from ColourPop that I often use in conjunction with this one. It's just sort of warmer and peachier. They're both gorgeous, but they're different enough, again, to keep. Same with this one from the Alamar palette. These are all similar, but different enough to keep. This Juvia's Place shadow is really creamy and icy white, like almost blue. And then Now and Zen from ColourPop is a duochrome that shifts gold. So they look the same, but they are different. I'm gonna put these away and these away. I want to make sure that I have enough magnets for all the ones I'm keeping, so these ones don't have magnets yet. I'm just going to put them right here, and then I'll put magnets on them at the end if I have enough. So I don't reach for really pink shiny eyeshadows that frequently. It's just not something I really love. Peachy pink, shiny pink. This one from the Juvia's Place palettes really impresses me. It's like really duochrome and gorgeous. So I want to keep that, and I'm going to let go of this similar ColourPop one. And then again, this one from ColourPop, it's really rich and shifty and lovely, and I always reach into it when I want something like this. And then these two Morphe shadows are similar to it, not very similar, but they're close enough, and I use this kind of eyeshadow infrequently enough that I think I can let them go because I'm keeping that one. All right, just based on quality of swatches, I'm keeping these three and I'm letting go of these three. Actually, you know, this eyeshadow from Morphe and this one from Juvia's Place swatch really similarly, and I'm gonna go ahead and keep the one from Juvia's. It's a little more bronze and a little less orange, and I just like it more. Okay, so this ColourPop one is really similar both to the one from Juvia's and to this eyeshadow from the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette that I really like, which is a little more on the mauve side. So these are like more different from each other, and this one is too similar to both of them. Even though it's a really amazing shadow, someone's gonna really love that, but I don't need it. And then this one, it's really interesting. It's kind of like a boring mid-toned cranberry shimmer, but I've been wanting to do more cranberry looks lately, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and hang on to this ColourPop single. So I'm making a last minute decision to keep this eyeshadow for two reasons. One is that I think I recognize it now that I'm about to put it away as Sissy from the Jaclyn Hill palette, and I know that I have loved using that eyeshadow a number of times in the past. I think I decided not to keep it because it swatches kind of similarly to this one, but this one's definitely darker. I don't have anything that's quite this intense pink gold, sort of NARS orgasm eyeshadow. I don't have anything like that, and I think I was planning to keep this one. And then the other reason is that there's actually enough space. There's room for one more, so I'm gonna keep that baby. So these are the single shadows that I'm going to rehome. I am sure I will be able to find someone to adopt them. And this is my palette of singles. I will probably do some rearranging at some point, and after I rearrange them, I'll hold up the finished palette in the end of the video. So when I film the outro to the video, I will show you what I decided to do with these in terms of arrangement. Right now, my camera is about to die, and I also need to start making dinner. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this declutter portion of the video, but you will see the finished product in just a moment. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching all the way through to the end of my single eyeshadow declutter. Let me show you what the palette looks like now. I didn't actually do very much rearranging. I kind of like this higgledy-piggledy, topsy-turvy way of putting the shadows into this big pan for now. Partly because they're all different shapes and sizes, and there's just no way to rearrange them in rows symmetrically that will be gratifying. I would rather kind of embrace the chaos and have it be this colorful scatter of shapes and sizes than have it look like I tried to make it orderly and wasn't able to achieve that order because the pans are all different. So I'm pretty happy with this. The main organizing factor here is that the mattes are at the bottom and the shimmers are at the top, and there's kind of this line of demarcation running through the middle. So the mattes and shimmers aren't touching each other. They're separated by a little tiny slice of space. And then I did try to group any shadows that are very, very similar to each other in color close together. That's the thing that I did after I finished filming the video. I hadn't quite gotten it that way when I was sitting there doing all of the decluttering because it took a little bit of time and rearranging. So this is what it ended up looking like. I cannot even begin to express the sense of excitement and joy and luscious artistic anticipation that I have when I think about or look at this palette now, since I did the decluttering and rearranging. This palette is bringing me more joy and excitement than maybe any eyeshadow palette that I've ever purchased. And I didn't have to buy anything except for this magnetic palette to do this. I didn't buy any eyeshadows is all I'm saying. But I feel like this is new to me. I feel like this is a glorious, luscious dream of an eyeshadow palette. Not even really a palette though, because even though I will keep this on my vanity and use it, what I'm really excited about is curating smaller palettes from this selection right here. I just feel like the coming weeks and months and maybe even years are going to be so bright with beautiful eyeshadow because of what I've done here in this project, because I depotted the palettes that I didn't love, got rid of the dupes, got rid of the shadows that didn't really spark joy, and I guess I just endorse this kind of project. I endorse curating a collection like this. I know that this isn't the best way for everyone. I know that some people prefer to have small magnetic palettes. This palette is huge. It takes up a lot of space and it's perfect for me because I like being able to see everything that I have, and I'll enjoy kind of removing things from this palette and then putting them back in. This might not be what works for you. I just wanted to let you guys know that yet again, I have found with this project that going deeper into what I already own and making smart choices and kind of curating and sculpting what I already own has made me so happy, and really made me a lot happier than buying stuff makes me. So for what it's worth, I really, really loved this project, and I hope that it was fun for you guys too to follow along. Thank you again so much for watching this video, and I hope that you are remembering to take extra good care of yourself right now so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.